I'm so glad that I waited to watch this film for the first time because back in 2016, I wouldn't have cared about this film the way I did when I watched it for the first time in 2020, actually, during
Mhm.
in the middle of the lockdown and all. And I watched it. I still remember I watched it while it was raining outside. And yeah, it is not just one of my favorite Scorsese films, but one of my favorite modern films of all time. The way Scorsese directs this film, it's just immaculately every scene. Oh god, like I don't want to get right into the spoilers, but without setting the plot or anything, but it basically follows the journey of two Jesuit priests going to Japan and discovering things about their faith and also about themselves.
Hi Aryan, welcome to my podcast, which is called Spoiler Alert with me, Cinephile Sanket. So today we are discussing Martin Scorsese's passion project, which is called Silence. With like he directed, he co-wrote, and he also produced it. So Aryan, when did you watch this film for the first time? First of all, like, and when you watched it, what was your experience like? And when you, I think you said that you rewatched it multiple times. So what was the
Yeah.
experience then? So just yeah, tell me that.
Okay, so Silence is a 2016 film by Martin Scorsese, one of the best directors of all time. And I did not watch this film years until it came out because I knew that it was a very like period piece and a very thematically complex film. So I deliberately waited my way to watch it properly. And to be very honest, back when it came out in 2016, I was told by some of my film friends that it's very long and boring. So for a year or two, I was like a bit underwhelmed. Ki, oh, let's not watch this film and all. And I was busy meanwhile watching and rewatching La La Land and other films of that year. And then I'm so glad that I waited to watch this film for the first time because back in 2016, I wouldn't have cared about this film the way I did when I watched it for the first time in 2020, actually, during
Mhm.
in the middle of the lockdown and all. And I watched it. I still remember I watched it while it was raining outside. And yeah, it is not just one of my favorite Scorsese films, but one of my favorite modern films of all time. And Silence, the first time I watched it, I knew going in that it was going to be a very long and complex film that is going to take its time to grow upon you. But I did not feel bored for a single minute. And the way Scorsese directs this film, it's just immaculately every scene. Oh god, like I don't want to get right into the spoilers, but without setting the plot or anything, but it basically follows the journey of two Jesuit priests going to Japan and discovering things about their faith and also about themselves. And there's one entire sequence where certain Christian missionaries are tied in front of the ocean or sea, and because they didn't denounce their faith. So as a result of that some Japanese uh, militants, some Japanese missionaries do that, and you feel the water, like you feel the water splashing on your guts. And that's the way Scorsese directs this film, the use of shadows, the use of light. It does look like a passion project of his, and he said it in multiple interviews that he grew up a Catholic priest. He grew up as a Catholic, and he wanted to make this film 20 years before 2016, and he ended up making uh, the Last Temptation of Christ, and a film that I mostly love, even though it's very flawed. But I can see why this might be considered as his passion project, and it sucks that this film didn't work at the box office. And yeah, that's a whole different discussion. So,
Actually,
what about you?
I don't know like I which year I did watch this film, but I can tell you that because in 2016 this was not that much talk of the town. It
Yeah.
was at some point because Martin
Mhm.
Scorsese is coming up with this whole big passion project,
Right
which
after the Wolf of Wall Street, right after the success of that film,
yes,
which was
yeah,
absurd. Yeah.
yeah, no, yeah, yeah. He made Wolf of Wall Street just like
Yeah.
before this,
A
and
couple of
I
years. Yeah.
yeah, a couple of years before, but I thought that
Mm.
this movie would work, but this didn't. But yeah, I
Yeah.
like I didn't care more about the box office, obviously, but I cared, like, I don't know, like this film was just nominated for one Oscar. That was just best cinematography. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't knew how this movie would pan out, because obviously I would dedicatedly follow the Oscars back then. Like,
Mm.
I would watch Moonlight, I would watch Arrival, La La Land, all those
Back
films.
then,
Sorry, which
not
film?
anymore. Back then, so you don't
Back
follow
then,
them anymore.
yeah. Oh,
After Coda's when
oh,
I
oh
was at
my,
Green Book.
oh my God, literally, I thought Coda. Okay, let's
Yeah.
not get into that, but yeah, but yeah, actually, like, back then I used to, like, religiously follow the Oscars, so that's the reason I, like, avoided watching that film.
Nice pun.
Yeah,
Religiously follow. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely, because I thought, okay, let's not watch this film, because it, like, didn't have much nominations, just one Oscar nomination, so that's the reason. But
Yeah.
later I found out, later I found out that Martin Scorsese has made a bunch of great films. Like, this is the time I should watch this film. So
Definitely.
later when I watched it, I was in awe, because, like, this wasn't just the story of a survival. Like, it just wasn't just the story of two priests, but they were just like, they wasn't like finding God. They weren't just like spreading Christianity, but they were just like facing the toughest times. Like, they were just, they stood the test of time. They was like, they were kind of Jesus, and at one point, obviously, Andrew Garfield's character actually feels that he's like Jesus, and
Yeah.
at that moment I was
He
like,
believes so in his head.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like, I was like, what the fuck am I watching? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I was shocked, because, like, he's thinking that he's like Jesus, and he has this kind of hairstyle, and
Yeah. A
that
white
everything.
Jesus, basically. That's what he is. Yeah.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I was like, I was very much shocked by it. And then uh then later came the very shocking part of the entire film, the ending. Like, people mostly, like, tell that, okay, M. Night Shyamalan has a very mind-blowing endings. Obviously, people are right as well,
Definitely.
but I think the ending of Silence was, like, a very much tough part for me to, like, kind of digest, because it's, I think, it might be, like, like, very relevant in today's time, because like, people are right now, like, all time, like, kind of telling them to, like, denounce your religion or some kind of thing, like, which is happening right now. But
Yeah.
that this guy, this priest, he actually denounced his religion as well. But
Yeah.
later, at the end, we actually find out that he didn't denounce it. He was just, like,
Yeah.
showing this to the entire world, but he was a Christian in his heart, and that's the
We
main
see the
thing.
artifact.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we see that he is Christian in his heart, and that's the real thing that matters. Like, he didn't denounce Christianity, or didn't denounce his religion. He was just, like, for the outside world, he was just, he didn't he denounced that. And I that actually moment that really hit my heart, because at the end, we can, like, we can do anything if our heart, like, whatever our heart wants. And that's the thing, like, that inspires me, that, okay, if someone tells us to, like, just do that, but in our heart we can still follow that, and, like, religiously do that stuff as well. And that's the main reason I loved this film.
Yeah.
And obviously, you talked about the shadows and the lighting as well. I loved those aspect as well. So I actually wanted to know more from you. What, like, can
Mhm.
you, like, just go into detail about the, like, the lightings and cinematography in this film, since obviously it's mostly, like, made under the
In the
natural
nature.
lights. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, can you
Mhm.
elaborate on that?
So even if no one tells you that this film was made in 2016, you get a feeling that this is probably a very old film. The way it looks, the way it breathes. And you said that it's a film. In the end, we come to know that he never left on, like he never abandoned his faith. He never apostatized and its true essence. But that's what I love about this film. Like Unlike a lot of religious films, it never gets preachy or didactic, and it's always open-ended enough and ambiguous enough to engage both religious as well as non-religious people, because it's never showy, and it asks so many questions that still remain so relevant today, especially in a country like India, where what does your faith mean? Does your faith and religion, does it only reflect through the kind of artifacts you keep and collect, or can one really rob one of his own faith? And these questions, these are the questions that humanity and mankind has always faced. And there's been millions of killings and persecution in the name of religion. But this film is like, no, screw all that. What I'm giving you, Scorsese in his head probably went that what I'm giving you is not solid answers. I'll probably leave you even more confused and frustrated by the end of this movie. But I want you to meditate on the question and nature of faith in itself. And through that, he questions the very nature of the human condition. And he deconstructs that in doing so. And that's just, I'm so glad he waited 20 years to make this film. And I'm so glad I waited 4 years to finally watch this before.
Hmm.
I'm just so overwhelmed. And there's so many aspects you talk about him, Andrew Garfield's character thinking and believing that he is himself Jesus, and then Liam Neeson's character comes to him in the second act and he says that Jesus, you think Jesus would have done this? What you're doing? Maybe you're just arrogant. That not denouncing your faith and letting people die. Do you think that's what God would do? And that one scene in the cell, I'm literally getting chills just thinking of that one scene between Liam Neeson and Andrew Garfield, two terrific actors. And while leaving that cell in that scene towards the film's climax, Liam Neeson says that pray this time, pray, but this time pray with your eyes open. It's just, and then Andrew Garfield's Rodrigo, let me check.
Father
Rodriguez,
Ferreira,
yeah,
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 Father Rodriguez, yeah.
that's Liam Neeson, yeah. Yeah, so Rodriguez looks at people and his people hanging from that, hanging upside down, and he sees them as they slowly, take their last breath. And it's just those little touches in the film that just transcend it to a whole different level. And it's just very overwhelming. And I'm someone who finds these issues very interesting. And I get too overwhelmed by themes of religion and how people are killed and persecuted in the name of religion. I love silence. So yeah, I love this film.
But so Martin Scorsese has also made the Last Temptation of Christ and also
Yeah,
Kundun, obviously,
Kundan. Yeah.
which
I've not watched it deliberately, and yeah. Kundan is the only, I think, one of the few Scorsese films I've not watched yet. So
oh, okay. So I thought
yeah.
like like you have watched it. I was actually asking like how was it like, and how was it better than it? Well, I actually watched Kundun. I haven't watched The Last Temptation of Christ. I don't know about that, but
Oh,
so let's see. You have to watch Kundun as well. I'll watch The Last Temptation of Christ. So
last,
let's see how it pans
definitely.
out as well.
The Last Temptation might come across as a very, too bold in its execution, and you sense that it was Scorsese during the earlier years of his career. But this film, it almost has a, I don't even know how to explain it, almost has a very introspective look to it. It is very introspectively shot, and through that introspective imagery, you get a sense that Scorsese knows what he's doing. I mean,
Hmm.
he's one. There's a reason why he's one of the best filmmakers of our time, but there's so much clarity in every shot over here. And even
Hmm.
the editing, I'm telling you, it's a 2 hour 40-minute films, but once you go into it expecting what it is, and once you take your time, once you go with the flow and let those images breathe on you, it flows like, it just flows very well.
Hmm. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
but
And even the framing, like the use of bars, there's a lot of cells and there's a lot of dividing imagery throughout this film. And Scorsese uses those divides, the cell linings, and just those borders to create the societal divides, which was so evident back then. They still are now in a lot of pieces. but it's just great filmmaking because every scene, that's why the world building in the film is so rich. And people always like, all everyone knows that Bong Joon-ho used the same technique. I mean, a lot of filmmakers use this. It's a very go-to technique, but Bong Joon-ho used the same technique and method in Parasite, and which won Best Picture. But no one talks about films like Silence. So it
Which
just it's
you also have a poster of Parasite
yeah, I love
just
Parasite.
behind you.
No offense
Yeah.
to yeah. I know people might be wondering that, but it's purely coincidental that we are wearing the same t-shirt, or maybe we are just nodding to Kylo Ren being in this film. So, what was your
Yeah.
thought on Adam Driver's performance here?
I mean, I loved them, both Adam Driver and Andrew Garfield. Like strangely, I've seen Adam Driver more than like more in more films than in
Garfield.
Andrew Garfield.
Yeah.
Andrew Garfield, like apart from Spider-Man, I haven't seen his Spider-Mans, but like I have seen Hacksaw Ridge and other Breathe
Oh
and
wow.
some other films as well. But Adam Driver, I've seen in many films, and he is a guy like who's healthy, has like healthy as hell. Like he is like a
Yeah.
body, has a body, and he's also a marine as well, like ex-marine. So him transforming into this guy who is
Loses
starving,
weight and
and like who
yeah, yeah,
loses weight and starving, and like who is just
yeah.
wandering here and there. And I was like, wow, like that's kind of transformation, and that kind of dedication takes, like it takes time and it takes like courage, for both Andrew Garfield as well and Adam Driver.
Andrew Garfield went on to shoot Hacksaw Ridge just 6 months after this film ended. So
Yeah, absolutely. Like it was
yeah,
like that year as well. Like he was, I think his like kind of a good breakthrough year. Obviously, he was famous for a Spider-Man, but
yeah.
I think like
But
he,
these films proved his artistic
yeah,
side.
that's the reason I actually loved him in this film as well, and even Hacksaw Ridge. But I watched it way back in 2016, obviously, for when I was following the
Mm.
Oscars. But like this film, this kind of touched me, like by his acting as well,
Mm.
like just like following his path, following what he thinks that he's right, and following that. Okay, Jesus would have
Mm.
done that as well, and like we have
Mm.
to spread the gospel to the
Yeah,
entire world. And like he
yeah,
actually believes that, okay, Jesus told us that spread the gospel to everyone who listens. So that's the reason he actually believed in. And
yeah.
at the end, he
So
couldn't.
much so that he looks like
Yeah,
so much so that he literally feels that he's Jesus. Yeah. And we talk
absolutely.
about Jesus, but there's also so many little touches from the gospel, from the Bible, that we also get a character called Kichichiro who
Yeah.
mimics Peter and like Judas. There's so much symbolism there as well. He keeps on betraying Andrew Garfield's character, Rodrigo,
Hmm.
time and time again. And we as an audience feel that what's up with this guy, man? He's so annoying and all. And then at the end, oh God,
But I think
he
Aryan,
was
actually what I did was I also watched a small 24-minute documentary, kind of a thing, behind the scenes kind of a thing, where Jay Cox, the co-writer of this film, he actually talks about that Kichijiro. I think I'm like, if I'm spelling him, like pronouncing him correctly, he's actually the more human like
exactly, yeah. He's more
thing.
grounded and he reacts the
Yeah,
way people should actually in that situation
yeah,
because we get that
mm,
little backstory in flashback. And again, the way Scorsese uses flashback in his films, like 90% of the filmmakers need to take notes from that. And we see that how his family was persecuted and killed in front of him because they didn't denounce their faith, they didn't apostatize. And it's just that's what I would do, man. That's what people would do. And we constantly judge him yet. And that's the
bro,
brilliance of this
bro,
film.
they were like common people, and
Yeah, yeah.
they were just told to denounce their faith, or they'll just they would have to get killed. So that's the thing, like a common man would do, like they would denounce the faith, because
Yeah.
like that's the only option they have. And that's the reason I kind of like that character, Kichichiro, because he was ready at any time to denounce it, because he
He
knows
valued
that
human life.
yeah, like he knows that what can happen to him, and like what happened to his family.
What a definitely.
Exactly, so that's the thing. And I just absolutely like liked that performance and that character as well. I also liked that performance, that who was the Japanese kind of a general, I would
Yeah,
say.
yeah.
I don't.
Inquisitor. Yeah. The
Inquisitor,
Inquisitor.
yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly,
And
I love.
even when you get annoyed and you kind of hate him, you don't like him for the things, the way he does things, but you also understand why people in Japan at the time would feel that way. Because, I mean, again, no offense to any religion, but people would come, missionaries would come to their land according to their view, from their point of view, and they are just converting people into Christianity, even if it's not forcefully. But all they want to say is that let us do our thing. Don't interfere in how we work. And it just makes so much sense. Again, this movie, about along a lot of things that it does right, it never denounces any one religion, or it never Christianity or Buddhism or any other religion. And by doing so, by making us realize that, oh, of course, Kijichiro wouldn't denounce his faith because he's got people to save. He knows the consequences. I think that's what the writers and Scorsese intended, because he knows that people in 2016 in 21st century are watching this, and by watching this, maybe they realize that these are the kind of atrocities religion has people have done in the name of religion. This is how religious persecution looks like. So maybe if you're still seeing these things around you, maybe you need to recalibrate, and maybe you need to reconsider that there's a reason why we are living in the 21st century. There's a reason why mankind has flourished between those era. And yeah.
But I think you talked about it so greatly. Aryan, you
Yeah.
just mentioned in some minutes ago that Scorsese was actually born like a raised Catholic. So that's the like
Yeah.
that's the main reason we can
Big
see.
defense also for him. Even though a lot of religious groups did, especially during the release of Last Temptation, there was a lot of violence, and a
Hmm,
church was in fact burned, if I'm not wrong, during that film's release.
I
So
think
I
yes.
also think, what do you think might be the reason? I think people overlook these issues and these little things a lot, but I think people need to pay more attention and talk about these things. Why do you personally think this film didn't work at the box office worldwide?
I think because whenever Scorsese dives deep into his religious kind of things, people like hate,
Yeah,
afraid, get afraid that okay, this is a controversial film. And like
yeah,
mind you, I just googled this film just yesterday, and there was an article that this is the most controversial film of the year, because like there were two white guys who were just converting
mm,
people in another land, and like they were just converting the people from that part of the world. And I was like, no bro, this is something else. This is like
yeah.
how
Purely
do I
out of context. Yeah,
explain that writer, bro? Because this is like way beyond that. Like it's
exactly.
not just two people just converting those people. They were like, I think like people like this happens many times, because there are people who don't have any intention or any way in their life, but like some people tell them that okay, yeah, you can have God and you can just pray to God, and God will listen to you, and God will like fulfill your dreams and all those stuff. Like people actually do get believed in it, I think. And that's pretty much normal, that you don't have to get feared from it. And that's
Yeah,
that's actually the main I wouldn't say the hidden symbolism of the film, but like it's in general, the film does says that. And let's just to I don't know, but I was like kind of shocked by seeing that article of that. But as I was saying that like he was actually raised a Catholic. That's the reason we can actually watch these kind of films like The Last Temptation of Christ. I haven't watched it, but I have watched like a couple of scenes from that film, like the opening, like two or three scenes of that film. I get it why it is so controversial, but like in the starting of that film, actually he is very well says that there isn't this film isn't based on the Gospels, but like I
Yeah,
don't know why people got offended, but still, like
yeah.
he made his
The Last Temptation, I still think that it might offend a lot of like hardcore Christians because it makes Jesus appear like a human, and it basically humanizes Jesus Christ. And I can see why that might be a red flag for a lot of Christians. But I think I personally think the reason this film did not work majorly at the box office, one of them being that the runtime, it's like 2 hours and 40 minutes, plus it's a period piece. Plus, I feel that this movie, a lot of religious films work very well when they are blatantly conservative in their storytelling, when they are blatantly appeasing a certain section of the socio-political demographic. And this film is neither. It's neither pro God, pro Christianity, neither anti religion. It's a as i said as i said it's a very thoughtful meditation on the nature of spirituality in general. And I think through its intrinsic this is what I wrote in my notes, that through its intrinsic breakdown of faith, silence deconstructs the very nature of the human condition. And yeah, I also two of our mutual friends, Dhruv and Anisha, they wrote an amazing piece on silence. They did a trilogy, they did a three-piece character study and a film study on Scorsese's uh, faith or religion-based films, including Last Temptation, Silence, and Kundan, which I haven't watched. And please, people, whoever is listening, watching to this, go and check out that piece. It's just amazing. It's way better than I could articulate this film, because I tend to get too overwhelmed when I sit and talk about some of my favorite films of all time, especially when they have something to do with religion. So yeah.
Mhm. But I wanted to ask you this, since we both live in India and
Yeah.
we obviously are very much familiar to Bollywood. Why
Yeah.
don't like Bollywood does like why don't Bollywood try, or just like just little bit try to make these kind of like films, these kind of religious films, and like to just specifically say like how
Hmm.
Scorsese or how other people as well also make, like how far is Bollywood going in this thing?
I think anyone who reads the newspapers would know the answer. Anyone who reads the newspaper. And I think there have been some very thoughtful films dealing with these things, even if that's not directly, at least obliquely. I feel Govind Nihalani's Tamas was among those rare films. The pioneer of Indian parallel cinema, Govind Nihalani's 1984. It was showed as a TV
Hmm.
short, but it's actually a film it's like 4 hours and 50 minutes, if I'm not wrong. It's available on YouTube, guys. So if you haven't watched it, just watch it. And that too got a lot of pushback and a lot of there were a lot of demonstrations and violent protests by the same organizations that have been burning our country since the last 20, 30 years. So if that happened back then, I can't even imagine what the response
Bro,
would be.
they
And
the same people actually who broke down the sets of water as well, Deepa Mehta's water. They actually got to,
yeah, yeah,
they had to go to damn Sri Lanka to just shoot those some scenes like they were remaining. Like
yeah,
I couldn't imagine that as well. Like
yeah.
absolutely. But yeah, go ahead. So yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. That silence, Scorsese made this film not talking about a particular religion, not targeting a particular religion's audience, right? This is why this film transcends any of its themes or genre boundaries or anything, because it speaks universally and it speaks wholly. And anyone who's, especially anyone who is into quote unquote art house cinema, if you haven't watched Silence, do yourself a favor. And I've watched this film more than 3 times. I have watched this film 3 times, and I've gone through behind the scenes making. I've gone through the essays and all, and it's just yeah. I
But
need to rewatch it. In fact, plus I mean, monsoons are here, and yeah, I
this
feel very melancholic, and I'll probably
absolutely.
rewatch this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
No, but like whenever like there are rains, we can watch this film since like because just of the opening things as only we can, because like the
yeah,
opening things we like the opening scenes we like it just deals with water and like
yeah.
that's
The
the
sound of
reason.
crickets and all.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I also, I mean, I might be in minority here, and this might feel like a long stretch, but I feel that even during those moments of silence in this film, whenever Jesus Christ is talking or whenever we see people denounce their faith, even during the silence, we hear crickets chirping. So maybe is Scorsese saying that even during the moments of utmost silence, there is always something you can pick on. So there's always something that's along you, by your side. And yeah, it's just me doing this. And
It's your
also,
interpretation.
do you remember that scene when by the end when we jump into the future and then when there's a different timeline when both of them, Rodriguez and Father Ferreira are sitting and they both are checking artifacts whether someone is smuggling Christian artifacts or not, and
Hmm.
he comes across a statue of Jesus Christ or something across, and he says something like our faith, our God,
Hmm.
and Rodriguez looks at him and he's like, our God, implying that didn't you denounce Christianity like 20 years back? And he said, what essay? He's just like, never mind, you probably misheard. And that's also a good implication that maybe he also never truly renounced his faith. Because again, it comes back to the one of the many main themes in the film that can you really separate faith from a man? Can you really separate his identity? This is profound in its storytelling.
Absolutely, and like I actually got noticed in the second or third viewing that like that this
Yeah.
film didn't have any background music, bro. Like
Oh
it
God.
was silence overall, like
Yeah.
without and
Yeah.
like but you said it correctly, bro. Like without any like background music, that this film worked so well. But I actually wanted to add one last thing, and I would disagree with you, bro. Like I wouldn't
Mm.
call like the long timing and the long hours of the film. It's like the running time of the film that didn't uh, I thought like it was perfect because there
Yeah.
are many biblical films as well. Like I think the Ten Commandments or Ben
Mm.
Hur, which are I think 3+ hours long,
Mm.
and this is
Mm.
just, bro,
Passion of Christ or
Passion
whatever
of
the
Christ
title
as
gets
well.
into.
Yeah, those
Yeah.
are like I
Yeah.
think 3+ hours. So and this is just under 3 hours, and so I
Yeah.
don't think that the runtime would be a problem. But and also Scorsese did a 2 hour 59 minutes Wolf of Wall Street as well. So that kind of also plays the. But obviously that had Leonardo DiCaprio also. So
Yeah.
and it had
Yeah.
some like kind of
And
masala
it's
kind of a
got
thing as
drugs
well.
and sex. Yeah.
Yeah, it also had some
Unlike.
masala and all those things as well, so
Yeah.
like people could relate to, like not
Yeah.
people, like majority of the people could relate to that story of obviously the frauds and all that stuff, but this is
But
kind
it's
of
an
a very,
underdog story, so it's like
yeah,
conventional. Yeah.
yeah, but this is kind of a very personal faith, and obviously people like over here people wouldn't understand it, since like not understand as in would give a damn
They would
about it.
need to be in a particular headspace to,
Yeah, but like
properly consume.
since we are also Hindus, but still we like, yeah, we actually understood this film, and like we like took this film to heart, and that's the like this is one of my all-time favorite Scorsese films. That's the main reason it
Yeah.
is.
It's among my top three as well. And I think a lot, Scorsese is one of the few directors whose films grow upon you a decade or two after their initial release. And a lot of his films, look at them. I'm so damn sure that people are going to consider The Irishman and even Silence as masterpieces in like 10, 15 years. Just the
Yeah,
way they consider The Departed or say Goodfellas. I mean, Goodfellas was instantly recognized by many as a great
No,
film, but
the
still.
king of comedy, the king of comedy.
Oh my God, yeah. Thank God for bringing that up. So
Yeah.
I feel that his films grow on you because he literally is ahead of the time. His films are, and you know what breaks my heart? This came in 2016, and the very next year, one of my favorite films of all time, Blade Runner 2049 came, and that also bombed at the box office. Two back-to-back releases in 2 consecutive years, which did not work at the box office. And again, in Scorsese's terms, this is cinema. This is what I expect from movies. This is not what all I expect, but at the core of it, this is what cinema has always been. It's a purely visual medium, and these filmmakers know, these rare filmmakers know how to deliver. And please, if anyone's watching this, Silence used to be on Netflix for a long, long time. I don't think it is anymore,
No,
but
no, it is, it is, it is.
buy this. Oh, amazing. It might be streaming in at least some countries, so use a VPN, but just support this film.
Mhm.
Don't pirate it, don't download it online. Just support this film because it is quite an experience, I would say. And you talked about how personal this film is. And well, comparing it to films like The Wolf of Wall Street, I think there's two aspects in mostly all films. There's a small scale aspect, and there's also grandeur, more grandeur, larger scale that a film has to deliver upon. The large scale aspect in this film is these two priests going to a different continent to, to find out where Father Ferreira went, what's wrong with Christianity, what are these Japanese people and Buddhists, and what are they actually doing, what are they up to. And that's a large scale of the film, right? The visuals and the setting in general, and it delivers more than enough technically. Even if one might point out to some of the loopholes and screenplay points that might be problematic or that might not fully deliver. Technically, I don't think anyone can argue that this is a flawed film. Technically, this is a perfect as a film could come. Probably Scorsese's most accomplished film, I would say. I would go that far in saying that. But
Absolutely.
that's the large scale aspect of this film. Even in the smaller scale aspects, like Andrew Garfield's character, like what is he actually going through?
Mhm.
And Father Ferreira keeping his faith, keeping his persona, and keeping his character in general in check. Even it succeeds in that small scale aspect. It's a perfect film for me.
But yeah, Aryan, thank you so much. Finally, I have to end this conversation sadly, but thank you so very much
Yeah.
for coming to my podcast and like talking and chatting
Mm.
about this great Martin Scorsese film. Thank you. It's been a real honor having you, bro.
Also, one film that people who like silence, one film that I would like to recommend quickly, Andre Tarkovsky's Andre Rublev.
Mhm.
Just watch that film if you like this. Yeah.
Sure thing. So thank you so much, and hopefully see you in another video as well.
Sure, man. Sure.
Thank you so much, and goodbye.